Good evening everyone, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Now today is 11th September 2025 and today we have some very important topics from the Hindu newspaper. So one by one we'll be discussing all these important topics in a very detailed and in-depth manner. And the first topic with which we are going to start this discussion is about there is a detailed article in the Hindu newspaper about the Kachativu Island and the issue between India and Sri Lanka. So let's understand this in a very detailed way. What exactly is the dispute of Kachativu Island between India and Sri Lanka and how this is going to be settled? So if we talk about the context of Kachativu Island, now this is a small island which is located between India and Sri Lanka near Park Strait. And in fact, there are differences between India and Sri Lanka over the rights near the waters of Kachativu Island. So particularly it is about the fishing rights of the fisherman community. Right, so if you look into the context of this topic, so it says that India's foreign policy, so it has long been shaped by principles of peaceful coexistence and regional cooperation. Right, so because India is situated at a particular position geographically where we have several neighbors, both maritime neighbors as well as the land border neighbors. So therefore we are being shaped by, our foreign policy is shaped by principles of peaceful coexistence and regional cooperation. So therefore when I say principles of peaceful coexistence, it is part of the Panchashil principles that we have followed, and we have been cooperating with all the regional powers including India's neighbors. Now one best example is India's neighborhood first policy, where we prioritize India's neighbors. And from the Panchashil framework, right, so we have a Panchashil framework. Now through this Panchashil framework we have identified 5 key principles, and those 5 key principles define India's relations with its neighboring countries including China. Right, so peaceful coexistence, non-interference, mutual respect, so all these are the 5 different principles of Panchashil framework. And apart from that we also have the non-aligned movement. So during Cold War era there were 2 different blocks and India was not aligned with any bloc. Right, so India has not aligned with any bloc during the Cold War times because of the fears of escalation. Right, so either we are not aligned towards the Soviet bloc or the US led Western bloc. And we also have the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation and Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral, Technical and Economic Cooperation. So what are they? So they are the regional bodies, right? So regional groupings or organizations which are established for the mutual cooperation in number of domains, number of areas. However, India has been consistently emphasized on interdependence and stability in South Asia. So India has never tried to escalate the tensions in the South Asian region, because we have followed the principles of Panchashil and we also followed the principles of non-aligned movement. So therefore we never tried to escalate the existing tensions. So we always looked after the stability and interdependence in South Asian region. However, if you look at India's relations with its neighbors, so India has been maintaining one of the closest and friendly relations with Sri Lanka. Right, so in fact earlier there were issues between India and Sri Lanka, But despite those issues, India and Sri Lanka have maintained such a strong and friendly relations. However, if we talk about the crisis between India and Sri Lanka relations, so the fishery crisis in the Park Strait. Now, what exactly is this fishery crisis in Park Strait? So, if we talk about this, now in fact, Indian fishermen are venturing into fishing in the Park Strait, right? So, which is ecologically very fragile area, ecologically fragile and very sensitive area, and it is also a rich biodiverse area, right? So Indian fishermen have been venturing into fishing in these areas. Now, why Indian fishermen have been venturing into fishing? So it is because of less fish catch in the Bay of Bengal region, and this is particularly driven by the unsustainable fishing practices. So these unsustainable fishing practices have primarily driven Indian fishermen to fish in the waters very close to Park Strait or Gulf of Mannar, which is ecologically very sensitive and fragile area. So therefore, it has given rise to the issue of the sovereignty of the Kachativu Island. Right, so Indian fishermen venturing into fishing in these areas has led to the debate or the questions of sovereignty of the Kachativu Island. And you can see here, this is the Kachativu Island, which is located in Gulf of Mannar near Park Strait, right? So between India and Sri Lanka. So if we talk about the fisheries dispute between India and Sri Lanka, Indian fishermen and Sri Lankan authorities. So the issue at the Kachativu Island is that communities in Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka's northern province, so they have shared the Park Strait for centuries, right? Particularly the fishing community. So these fishing communities have shared fishing communities in both Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka. So they have shared the waters near the Kachativu Island for centuries. However, the today's dispute over the Kachativu Island is largely from India's mechanized bottom trawling. Now, what exactly is this bottom trawling? So if we talk about the bottom trawling, so the nets, so which are heavy in nature, so those nets are simply dragged from the bottom of the seabed. Now when you drag such a heavy net from the bottom of the seabed, what exactly happens? So it destabilizes, it disturbs the fragile nature of the ecosystem and rich biodiversity in the Gulf of Mannar region. So that is the problem, right? So Indian fishermen, so they are using mechanized bottom trawling in the Sri Lankan waters close to the Kachativu Island. So this practice is called as unsustainable practice when it comes to fishing. So even though such practice is profitable for the Indian fishermen in the short term, but long term it will reduce the availability of fish, and it will also disturb the existing biodiversity and the fragile nature of the existing ecosystem, right? So it will also deplete the fish stocks, because what you are doing, primarily you are disturbing the ecosystem. So therefore it ultimately leads to depleting the fish stocks in the waters very close to the Kachativu Island. And in fact, when we talk about the oceans around the world, so there is a specific convention which actually governs the rules across the oceans. So that convention is United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, right? So this United Nations Convention on Law of Seas and Food and Agriculture Organizations Code of Conduct for Responsibilities of Fisheries. So both the convention and this code of conduct, so they condemn practices like bottom trawling, because bottom trawling involves a huge destruction and destabilizing the entire ecosystem. Right, so therefore both condemned such practices of fishing. Now in this context, let's understand the Sri Lanka's concern. The Sri Lanka's concern is that since Indian fishermen have been using a mechanized bottom trawling, so this actually destabilizes the ecosystem. But Sri Lanka in the year 2017 altogether banned bottom trawling. Right, so it has banned the bottom trawling. So that means the Sri Lankan fishermen will not use the mechanized bottom trawling for fish catching, particularly the fishing communities. But here the problem is that the Indian fishermen have been venturing into the waters close to the Kachativu Island with the mechanized boats, and they are also doing the mechanized bottom trawling. So this is the problem for the Sri Lanka. So it will not just deplete the fish stock for the Indian fishermen, but it will also deplete the fish stock for the fishermen of Sri Lanka, and thereby their livelihood will also be damaged or destabilized. Right, so therefore it not just harms Sri Lanka's marine ecology, but it also jeopardizes the livelihoods of Tamil Nadu's small-scale artisanal fishers as well. Right, so apart from that, traditional fishers who actually follow the sustainable methods, they don't follow the methods like bottom trawling. Right, so there are traditional fishers also, but they just follow the sustainable methods, so they also suffer from the resource depletion if the mechanized boats continue the bottom trawling. Right, so therefore it will be caused by trawler operations, compelling them to enter the contested waters. So therefore the issue is not just about the interstate, right, between India and Sri Lanka. So it actually reflects the deeper livelihood conflict within Sri Lankan fishing communities themselves as well. Because if Indian fishermen are venturing into the waters very close to the Kachativu Island and they are using unsustainable practices like bottom trawling for fish catch, so it depletes the fish stock and it impacts the livelihoods of the fishing communities, not just in India but also in Sri Lanka as well. So let's understand this in a very detailed way. So in 1961, so Pandit Nehru was not hesitant in giving up claims over the Kachativu Island, right? So at that point of, even after India's independence also, the Kachativu Island was in question, right? So to whom it should be belong to. Right, so in 1961, Pandit Nehru said that he would not hesitate in giving up claims to Kachativu Island. However, despite the Attorney General M.C. Sethalwat's opinion in 1960s, that despite the contradicting claims, India's case was stronger than the Sri Lanka's claims with respect to the Kachativu Island. And in fact, the rights over the Kachativu Island, including the fishery, other resources, they're being enjoyed continuously and uninterruptedly from 1975 to 1948 by Raja of Ramnand of Tamil Nadu. Right. So, however, following opposition pressure in 1968, Indira Gandhi government said that India's claim had to be balanced with need for good bilateral ties with Sri Lanka. Yes, India can claim the Kachativu Island, but our friendly relations with Sri Lanka also very important for us. So therefore, India's claims need to be balanced with India's ties with Sri Lanka. However, in 1974, Indian government's decision to relinquish India's claim conveyed to CM Karunanidhi of Tamil Nadu. So the government of India conveyed the message that we are going to give this Kachativu Island to the Sri Lanka. So that has been conveyed to CM Karunanidhi. And Foreign Secretary said Sri Lanka had records to push its claim, while State of Madras failed to show Raja Ramnand had original title over the Kachativu island. Now, why this Kachativu island is in question? Now, Indian fishermen cannot fish near the waters of Kachativu island, so they can take rest, they can dry their nets, and they even celebrate the annual Christian festival here, but they're not allowed into fish in waters very close to the Kachativu island. But what Tamil Nadu has been saying is that when its fishermen are venturing into fishing very close to this Kachativu island, Sri Lankan Navy very often opening fire against them and also arresting them illegally and arbitrarily. Now, the reason why Tamil Nadu fishermen are entering into the waters very close to the Kachativu island is because the depletion of fish stocks in the Bay of Bengal region. So therefore it is the question of livelihood for the fishermen. So because of that reason, they are entering into fishing into the Sri Lankan waters close to the Kachativu island. So let's understand the Kachativu question in a very detailed way, its background as well. Now, in fact, the public debate about the Kachativu island, so it actually portrays that the Kachativu is a small barren island in the Park Strait, and it is a crux of the fisheries conflict. So this is the general perception about the Kachativu island. However, in reality, 1974 India-Sri Lanka Maritime Boundary Treaty has been signed, right? So India-Sri Lanka Maritime Boundary Treaty has been signed in the year 1974. So this Maritime Boundary Treaty has placed this island within Sri Lankan territory, and it settled the issue as well, right? So as per this treaty, the Kachativu island belonged to Sri Lanka, and this treaty has also settled the issue. However, the international law, the boundary treaties are sacrosanct, right? So they are considered as sacrosanct. You cannot violate such treaties once you have signed such agreements, and they cannot be unilaterally repudiated. So this is in the context that recently there are demands from the states like Tamil Nadu that we need to claim back the Kachativu island, and it is very important for our fishermen community. So in this backdrop, it is being said that under international law, boundary treaties are considered as sacrosanct and we cannot unilaterally repudiate them, right? So this is contrary to the popular belief that the island was not gifted by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So it was not gifted, rather it was part of a boundary agreement between India and Sri Lanka, and India ceded this territory to Sri Lanka, right? So it was part of the 1974 India-Sri Lanka Maritime Boundary Treaty. However, there are some historical records, and those historical records have been demonstrating that Sri Lanka had a strong claim over the Kachativu island. So in fact, they have the evidence of administrative control dating back to Portuguese and even Dutch periods as well, and earlier to the Tamil kings of Jaffna. However, India's concession, so India giving this island to Sri Lanka, was therefore consistent with the legal precedent and the international norms as well. So therefore, it is very important to distinguish between the sovereignty of the Kachativu and the fishing rights of the communities, the fishing communities from India. And in fact, the former, that is the sovereignty of Kachativu island, has already been settled through 1974 Maritime Boundary Treaty. So through this, the sovereignty of the Kachativu island has already been settled, right? So however, the problem with the fishing rights of the communities, so still it is an ongoing debate between the governments of Tamil Nadu and so governments of India, Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, because fishermen are very often arrested and Sri Lankan Navy has also firing against the fishermen if they venture very close to, if they are fishing very close to the islet of Kachativu. So therefore this issue has to be settled in an amicable manner, right? So there is a need for a special representative level talks including all relevant stakeholders so that we can come across an appropriate solution on this issue. So the next important topic is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So let's understand a brief context of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So we all knew that this Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a grouping, right? So it is a multilateral grouping which has brought in the like-minded nations to collaborate on number of areas: trade, commerce, connectivity, anti-terrorism, so all these areas. So if we talk about the context in which this article has been given in the Hindu newspaper, so recently the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit took place at a place called Tianjin in China, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi also attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, right? So in fact, leaders from around 23 countries have attended this summit along with 10 international organizations and their representatives. So they have attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, and therefore this actually marks that the largest Shanghai Cooperation Organization gathering since its inception in 24 years. Right from its inception in 24 years, this marks the largest gathering of SCO. So therefore this Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit actually marks or highlights the solidarity, friendship, cooperation, aiming to advance the organization into a new phase of high quality development. Right, so this is the context, and in fact the significant aspect of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So 2018, so the last time Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid an official visit to China. But after 2018, 2025 SCO summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi officially visited China. So therefore this is also a significant aspect to further strengthen India and China relations. Now let's understand the key outcomes of the Tianjin Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. So it is being said that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit has produced significant results. So the significant results including the creation of 4 security centers and the decision to establish Shanghai Cooperation Organization Development Bank. So this is the outcome, that they are going to establish the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Development Bank, and the 4 security centers have also been created to fight terrorism, to fight the internal security threats that these countries have been facing. And in fact the BRICS countries have also established a multilateral bank, a BRICS bank. So on the same lines, SCO Development Bank also established. So in fact leaders also endorsed a new decade long development strategy, and they even pledged support for multilateral trading and global peace. So in fact President Xi has also announced major cooperation platforms in energy, green industry, and even the digital economy as well. So alongside there are centers for innovation, higher education, and even the vocational training as well. So therefore it has been highlighting the global governance initiative. So therefore she has called for equality, rule of law, and people-centered multilateralism. So since joining in 2017, now India and Pakistan became members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization at the same time. So since joining in 2017, India has played a vital role in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and since its joining, India is known as one of the key players in this grouping. So China has even acknowledged Prime Minister Modi's support and seeking deeper collaboration in the areas of security, finance and sustainable development. So these are the areas, right? So these are the key outcomes of this Tianjin Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit meeting. Okay, so let's understand the diplomatic relations, because this year marks the 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and China. So therefore this is a significant moment for both the countries. Now India China, they actually mark the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations, right? So this is, they are going to mark the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Xi Jinping, so they have reaffirmed their commitment to partnership. So they even emphasized the two nations are partners and not rivals. So this is a significant moment because we have gone through the Galwan clashes 2020, Doklam tensions. So despite Chinese aggression, assertiveness, and recent tense relations between these two countries, it is significant because they have reaffirmed their strong commitment to partnership, emphasizing that two nations are partners and they are not rivals. Now, in this context, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China is also a very significant movement. So let's understand some pathways for further strengthening the relations between India and China. Now, in fact, both India and China should learn from the past. So they need to build the mutual respect, mutual trust, and their relationship should build on the principles of Panchsheel, gradually resuming the dialogue between the governments to ensure peaceful coexistence and common development. Right? So this is a very key aspect that has to be focused on. And in fact, the development should remain focused on development should be the central area. So we should focus on the development, and China even expressed readiness to work with India in several areas. For example, education, culture, tourism, technology, poverty alleviation. And in all these areas, China is ready to cooperate and engage with India, and that is very significant. At a point of time, US imposing sanctions, or I would say tariffs, on India. And apart from that, the other important aspect to further strengthen India-China relations is to enhance the people-to-people exchanges across different domains, including political, academic, media and youth platforms as well. And there is a need to give more visas to each other's nationals to further strengthen people-to-people ties, and there is a need to attract more FDI from countries like China, and even there is a need to make sure that countries like China would understand India's concerns with respect to the critical minerals and other essentials. And trade deficit is also another major problem between these two countries. So trade deficit should also be taken care of. And in fact, the two sides should uphold the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, respect for each other's core concerns, and not let the unresolved boundary issue define the bilateral relations, right? So these 5 principles are part of the Panchsheel agreement, right? Now, cooperation should ensure stability and mutual growth for both these countries. And in fact, India and China are known as the leaders of the global south. So as the leaders of the global south, these two countries have common aspirations and common interests. So therefore, these two countries, both dragon and elephant, should come together. They should work together. They need to engage in number of areas, right? So therefore, they have the common stakes about the stability and security, mutual growth. So therefore, there is a need to work together for both India and China. So next important topic is, recently Himachal Pradesh has been declared a fully literate state. So let's understand about this, because apart from Himachal Pradesh, there are other states also. For example, Kerala has been declared fully literate state, Mizoram has been declared fully literate state, and followed by that Himachal Pradesh has been declared a fully literate state. Now Himachal Pradesh has been declared a fully literate state, joining Goa, Ladakh, Mizoram and Tripura. Right? So earlier Goa, Ladakh, Mizoram and Tripura. So they have already declared themselves as fully literate states. But fully literate doesn't mean that they have achieved 100% literacy rates. Right? So it doesn't mean that they have 100% literacy rate. So there's a program called ULAS. So this program has been launched for adult literacy in India. Right? So this program aimed at adult literacy in India, ULAS program. So because of the success of ULAS program, most of the states are able to achieve like almost fully literate status. So fully literate doesn't mean that these states have achieved 100% literacy, but it means that these states have achieved a literacy rates above 95%. Right? So they have the literacy rates above 95%, and Himachal Pradesh has recorded 99.3% of the literacy. So therefore it has been declared as a fully literate state. Now let's define literacy and full literacy in India. Right? So in fact, the Ministry of Education defines literacy as the ability to read, write and compute with comprehension, including skills like digital and financial literacy. And this is the definition of literacy that has been given by the Ministry of Education. So this is very, very important. You have to remember this. Right? So the definition of literacy means the ability to read, write and compute with comprehension, including the skills like digital and financial literacy. And a fully literate state doesn't mean that the state has 100% literacy, but even if a state has more than 95% literacy, so that state is considered as a fully literate state. And these definitions were issued in August 2023 for the ULAS program. So as I've already told you that in order to promote adult literacy, the ULAS program has been launched by the Union Education Ministry. Right? So this focuses on adult literacy, particularly those who are 15 years or more. Now in fact, the ULAS program has been aimed at 100% literacy by the year 2030 in line with the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030. And in fact, apart from aligning with UN Sustainable Development Goals, it also aligned with the National Education Policy of 2020. So let's understand what exactly is this ULAS program. So ULAS is understanding lifelong learning for all in society. So this is a national adult education initiative and it was launched in 2022 by the Ministry of Education. Right? So it was launched in the year 2022 by the Ministry of Education and it has been aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 and the National Education Policy of 2020. Now as I've already told you that this ULAS program targets the individuals or who are above 15 years of age to promote the adult literacy. So they have missed the formal schooling and therefore the ULAS program aim to equip them with reading, writing, numeracy, digital skills and financial literacy. Now let's understand how literacy is attained under the ULAS program. Right? So how literacy is actually attained. So under ULAS program, adults are taught basic reading, writing and arithmetic. So up to class 3 level. So all these things are being learned or taught to the adults under the ULAS program. So along with that, they would also be equipped with practical skills like reading time, using calendars, handling money, writing checks, making safe digital transactions. So in fact, training is delivered via mobile app or offline by students and community volunteers as well. And in fact, The learners will then take the functional literacy numeracy assessment test, which is also known as FL-NAT. So this is a 150 mark test in their chosen language. Now, successful candidates are certified under the National Institute of Open Schooling as having achieved the foundational literacy and numeracy as well. So let's understand how literacy is measured in India. So as per the 2011 census, literacy was defined as ability to read and write with understanding in any language for those who are aged 7 or above, right? So the ability to read and write in any language for those who are 7 years or above is what is called as literacy as per 2011 census. And the 2011 census has also provided some data about the literacy rates in India. So according to this, so the male literacy is 80.9% and female literacy is 64.6%. However, the adult literacy, so above 15 years, it was just 69.3%. So this is some important data about the literacy rates in India. So the next important topic is mining of critical and atomic minerals. So recently, the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has come up with some guidelines. It says that there will be no public consultations for mining of critical and atomic minerals. So with respect to mining of these types of minerals, there will be no public hearing. Right, so the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has exempted mining proposals for atomic, critical and strategic minerals from public consultations, citing national defense and strategic requirements. Right, so we have the national defense and strategic concerns, and because of that reason, so when we are mining the critical minerals and strategic minerals, so there will be no public consultations. So there will be no public consultations, right? So this is what the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change have said. So let's understand this policy decision. So this exemption only applies to minerals which are notified in Part D of the first schedules of Mines, Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1956. And in fact, the minerals which are part of Part D of the first schedule of the MMDR Act, including lithium, nickel, tungsten, titanium, graphite, uranium and beach sand minerals. So all these minerals included in the first schedule and Part D of Mines and Minerals Development Regulation Act. And in fact, the projects are still appraised under the Environmental Impact Assessment Act. So assessment. So this environmental impact assessment is also very important to understand the environmental impact of any project that has been carried out. So these minerals mining still appraised under the environmental impact assessment as per the 2006 notification, and they are being assessed by the sectoral expert committees as well. Now, what is the rational and strategic significance of it? So this move was requested by the Defense Ministry and Department of Atomic Energy because of the defense concerns, national security concerns, and also even the need for energy security and strategic nature of such minerals. And these critical and strategic minerals are important for national defense, strategic sectors, and even communication, navigation, and precision weapons manufacturing. However, public consultations are considered exempt due to the potential security risks and scarcity of rare earth metals in India. And for the rare earth metals, we are still dependent on countries like China, heavy dependence. Right, so the environmental impact assessment notification under 2006 environmental impact assessment normally mandates public hearings for any project which has been which is being carried out, and if we are assessing the environmental impact of such projects, so this notification has mandates the public hearing and written responses from the development project. However, this exemption to the critical and strategic minerals is specific to critical, is not general mining, because this is very important for national security, national defense, and also the strategic nature of such minerals. right? So this exemption is accompanied by central level appraisal and also sectoral review to maintain the environmental oversight, right? So the critical mission minerals mission has been launched, and this is an initiative aimed at securing a reliable supply of critical minerals. They are important for economic development, technological innovation, and national security. And this mission also involves various strategies, and one such strategy is exemption from public hearing for mining critical minerals and strategic minerals, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much.